Let's start with a familiar feeling. You're at an amusement park, strapped in, and the car crests the track. For a split second, you lift out of your seat. It's a thrill. Now imagine extending that feeling to the entire planet. What exactly would happen to our environment if Earth's gravity simply vanished for 10 seconds? The reality is far less fun than floating around your living room. Right now, the Earth is rotating at roughly 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. Without gravity pulling everything towards the center, the planet's rotation would instantly turn anything not bolted down into a high-speed horizontal projectile. Cars, buildings, and people would tear across the landscape. What we experience every day as our weight is actually the only mechanism keeping us from being launched into the void. Look at the Earth from a distance, and you see massive layers of liquid and gas neatly wrapped around a ball of rock. Gravity is the binding agent holding that structure intact. If that binding agent disappears, the oceans don't behave like oceans anymore. All 1.3 billion cubic kilometers of seawater would detach from the crust, slowly lifting upward into the sky as a massive, drifting cloud of water. The atmosphere follows suit. Free from the gravitational tether, the air we breathe would rapidly expand outward into the vacuum of space. This drastic drop in air pressure would be immediately lethal. Eardrums would shatter almost instantly, and drawing a breath would become impossible. Which brings up an obvious problem. If the absence of gravity is an apocalyptic event, how are astronauts surviving right now on the International Space Station? Because they appear to float safely, we assume they've escaped gravity, but they haven't. They aren't in zero gravity at all. Gravity is an action at a distance force. It pulls on the mass of your body from the center of the Earth, but you don't actually possess a sensory organ capable of feeling that pull directly. Gravity pulls you down, while the floor pushes back with a normal force. Remove the floor, and that push vanishes. You fall freely. Gravity remains constant, but your contact forces drop to zero. Your brain misinterprets this lack of physical resistance as apparent weightlessness. This exact physical state is happening on the International Space Station. Up at that altitude, Earth's gravitational pull is still roughly 90% as strong as it is right here on the surface. The station is actually falling toward the planet, but it's moving sideways so incredibly fast, about 5 miles every second, that its forward trajectory perfectly matches the curvature of the Earth. It's constantly falling and constantly missing. Astronauts aren't floating because they're free from gravity. They are floating because they have lost all physical contact with a stable, resisting surface. Over millions of years, the human body evolved as a machine perfectly calibrated to operate against a constant 1g downward force. Inside your inner ear, tiny structures called otolith organs act as internal accelerometers. They rely on gravity as a constant, world-based reference to tell your brain which way is up. Enter a state of continuous freefall, and those sensors are suddenly unloaded. The brain loses its absolute reference point, triggering intense motion sickness and a complete loss of spatial orientation. This document details the physical constraints of that environment. Because you lack the friction and normal force of the ground, taking a normal step is impossible. Moving requires exploiting the conservation of angular momentum or physically pushing your mass off a solid surface. Gravity provides the constant resistance that our internal biological map requires to function without crashing. The brain is highly adaptable, and after a few days in space, it rewires itself to function in freefall. But that makes the return to Earth brutal. Upon re-entry, astronauts face a grueling physical readaptation. The sudden return of contact forces requires their neurovestibular system to rapidly relearn basic posture, balance, and head-trunk coordination. Zoom out, and we see gravity performing the same stabilizing function for the entire planet. It binds the atmosphere and the oceans to the rocky crust, preventing our vital resources from boiling off into space. Zoom in, and it is the constant invisible baseline calibrating human perception, defining up from down, and dictating how we move through our environment. When you feel your stomach drop on an amusement park ride, you're experiencing a brief, harmless simulation of a world without physical resistance. The sensation of weightlessness is a thrilling illusion, but the physical reality of gravity is the silent architect ensuring our reality remains intact, keeping everything we know from instantly drifting into the void.